lives were taken here than down in Louisiana. Let me say that again.
Wow.
They had over 20 inches of rain. They had 178 mile-an-hour winds, gusts, and more lives were taken here than down in Louisiana. My message to everyone grappling with this devastation is, we're here, we're not going home till this gets done. Well, I really mean that. We're not leaving. We're going to continue to shout as long as it takes to get real progress here.
President Biden was in New York and New Jersey today surveying the damage from what remained of Ida. It has now left about 40 people dead there after devastating floods and torrential rains ravaged the two states 3 days after Ida made landfall in Louisiana. Biden warned that there's no more time when it comes to climate crisis and its catastrophic impact. He vowed his infrastructure package would help take immediate action to address the worsening weather patterns. Last week, he was also in Louisiana, where just 9 days ago, Ida made landfall as a Category 4 hurricane. The death toll has now risen to at least 17 in Louisiana, Alabama, and Mississippi, and many are still facing water, food, and gas shortages. About 377,000 residents still do not have power 9 days later, and that's with a continued heat index that has reached a high of 105 degrees in some areas today, and it hit 107 degrees last week. According to U.S. electric company Entergy, some Louisiana parishes may not have power restored for several more weeks. Lower Jefferson and St. Charles Parish, for example, could be without power until September 29th. On top of that, the U.S. Coast Guard is currently investigating at least 350 reported oil spills in and around the Gulf of Mexico. One aerial photo shows a mile-long black slick close to an offshore rig after Hurricane Ida. I know the president was assessing the damage in New York and New Jersey today, but we cannot forget what's happening in Louisiana is still an ongoing crisis and still life-threatening for many. We cannot forget New Orleans. Joining me now to discuss is former commander of the Joint Task Force Katrina, retired Lieutenant General Russel Honoré, and former mayor of New Orleans, Mitch Landrieu. Lieutenant General Honoré, can you just give us an update at this point on the recovery efforts in the region?
Yeah, the operative word is response, because we're still trying to save lives and recover the grid, restore the grid. So we're in the response phase. We're still searching houses and making sure people are clear of those homes that were abandoned, and setting up survival food with points of distribution. The recovery phase will come next, but right now getting electricity back going, which is the biggest part of the grid because that drives water. New Orleans and the surrounding areas south of Baton Rouge, they get their water out of the Mississippi River by and large, and that water has to be clean. Without electricity, we can't do that. So the infrastructure, the grid was broke. So we gotta fix electricity, that fixed water, that fixed sewer, and it fixed internet service. And our grid was destroyed, and that has to be restored first. So that's this challenge now, and you've already showed the numbers of how many people still have to be serviced with electricity.
Mayor Landrieu, I mean, there is no kind of competition about suffering from Ida. Everybody suffered who was hit by it and affected by it, taking nothing away from New York and New Jersey. But in Louisiana and in that region where Ida made landfall, this is an ongoing crisis. If you don't have power, it affects a cascade of issues that people have to deal with. And you're in the middle of kind of a heat wave in that region. And so just because the number of people, number of people who've died is not the same as it is in the Northeast, it's also not as many people, the density is not the same. But it's also an ongoing issue of suffering for many of the people in New Orleans and around that region. Are you concerned at all that the lens of attention might be taken away and people don't respond quickly and well enough?
Well, there's so many catastrophic events that are crossing across the nation, from wildfires in the west to tornadoes to hurricanes in the south and hurricanes in the northeast. One of the most ironic things about this weekend, and General Honoré, who's one of my great heroes, will remember this, is that Ida hit on the same exact day as Katrina. And then it went up to the northeast like Sandy did some months later. You may recall, Charles, that right after Katrina hit, we had Denny Hastert, who was a Speaker of the House, who somehow started blaming the fact that maybe we weren't living, a pure life in Louisiana, and that's the reason why the storm hit, as opposed to it being a massive infrastructure failure and us being not adequately prepared to receive the terrible stuff that's coming our way. And it wasn't until Sandy hit and all Connecticut, New Jersey, New York felt the pain of that they really started to really push hard on reorganizing the Stafford Act and FEMA. And so, although, we don't want to belittle anything that anybody else has suffered or really just count everything, lives are always the most important thing. However, there is dramatic physical damage, as General Honoré was saying. If you get around Lower Baton Rouge and you think about St. Charles, St. James, if you think about Houma and Dulac and Isle de St. Charles and all of these different areas, Barataria, where I was just the other day, and Jean Lafitte, these people took an ass whipping of major proportions. And as General Honoré said, in this instance, power is the king. When a storm takes out your power grid, it cuts off your legs. You can't get food, you can't get water, you can't get the things to people that we need. So we're still in the rescue and recovery phase. We're not in the rebuild phase yet. And it really goes to the issue of emboldening and fortifying our infrastructure around the country as well. On top of that, as General Honoré said, and I quote him because he says it so precisely, when it gets hot, the poor get hotter. When it gets cold, the poor get colder. And it had just beaten the wine out of everybody. So you're showing the pictures there. On Barataria Island, folks have basically nothing. I drove through General Laplace the other day. They had 7 feet of water. It was worse for them than Katrina was for the folks in the city of New Orleans. And by the way, Charles, last year, Laura hit, and a couple of other storms hit the southwestern portion, and they haven't gotten recovery either. So these storms are going to keep coming. These events are going to keep challenging the country. And from our perspective, we're not preparing ourselves as well as we should. And we've got to stay, as the president said, until everybody is assisted in getting back on their feet.
General Honoré, let me just back up and ask a bigger question, because as the mayor is saying, we're going to get to the stage of rebuilding. Can South Louisiana, the area around New Orleans, be made to be safe? In an age where you have intensifying hurricanes, even if they're not more frequent, you have loss of marsh. The city of New Orleans is literally like Venice in a way, because it sinks a tiny bit every year. Can it be made to be safe?
I think we need to, that same question was asked after Katrina, and we put the hurricane protection system in around New Orleans, and we made the city protected from flood. There are parts of the Gulf Coast that are a critical part of infrastructure of our energy sector. We lost 6 of our refineries, which not only feed gas, which is an essential element to all of our economy, but essential to our economy. There are places there that we may take a look at and encourage people to move further north. But part of that, Port Fourchon and places like that provide up to 20% of the U.S. energy for gas and oil products. Well, we're the second largest producer of gas in the country. That is critical to the operation of the entire country. We must do it better. We must do it, keep the chemicals in the pipe, and we got to deal with the pollution. But that is an essential element of the United States economy. The gas, the natural gas, and the gas that come out of Louisiana. Should we look for a future where we don't have to use fossil fuel? Yes. But right now, we cannot do anything in this country without those natural gas resources and without the gas resources and oil that come out of the Gulf of Mexico, and the access to that is the port. The other thing, the port of New Orleans is the biggest by-ton exporter of stuff that we sell around the world. 50% of America's barges are in Louisiana on any given day on things that we are exporting. So we are part of the national security of this country. And this is critical ground. We cannot give up the transportation network of the Mississippi River. We fought a war over the Mississippi River twice. And we got to remember, it is a part of the critical infrastructure of the nation. And we are not just some bypass. If somebody look at the iPhone or they pick up a bottle of water, it's got the DNA from this place, which is the Gulf Coast of Louisiana.
Mayor Landrieu, I'm kind of over time now, but I just want to get this political question in for you. Is President Biden right that his infrastructure bill would go a long way toward remedying the issues that you're facing now in Louisiana and also that we're facing in the Northeast?
Charles, I'm smiling because I'm thinking about voting rights and I'm thinking about infrastructure. I can't think of two more nonpartisan issues in the world. I mean, democracy depends on people having access to the polls. I don't know why that's a partisan issue. The other thing that's not partisan is this. The guys that call themselves civil engineers, that I have to believe are mostly old white guys that I'll bet you are mostly Republican, will tell you that the roads, the bridges, the sewer, the water systems in America, if they were to fix them all, it would cost about $5 trillion. So for the life of me, I can't understand why anybody's arguing over spending money on fixing the sewer systems that are obviously broke, the electrical grid that obviously is not fortified, the bridges that get us from place to place. My mind just wants to explode at this partisan fight that we're having over the most nonpartisan issues. So I'm kind of just at a little bit of a surprise that the infrastructure bill seems really small to me, given what the civil engineers say, what it is that we need. And I can't think that there's one person in America, whether it's the bridge in Minneapolis, whether it's the subway in New York, whether it's the bridge that connects Lake Charles to Texas, or the Mississippi River Bridge, or the energy grid in New Jersey, or the sub. I don't understand what the big deal is. I think we ought to be spending a lot more on it. And as Russell said, General, if I might refer to you by your first name, is yes, we can protect stuff, but you got to build the levees high enough. You got to build the road strong enough. You have to build the houses high enough. You have to fortify the grid tough enough in order to sustain what we know are bigger storms. They're slower, they're more powerful, and they're coming our way. That's not going to stop. So we can retreat and we can hide and we can go underground, or we can stand up, get ready, be prepared, and invest the money that we need. I think if America is going to win the future, she's got to quit having partisan fights over nonpartisan stuff that would just be common sense to working class folks in this country.
Right. Retired Lieutenant General Russel Honoré, thank you so much for your time tonight, sir. And Mayor Mitch Landrieu, the next time you have a stack of books behind you, sir, I expect to see at least one of mine in that stack.
Wow.
Well, I'll let you go this time. Thank you.
Well, I'll put it right next to the
much,
Bible,
sir.
Charles.
All right, thank you so much. Coming up, a new tactic for use of force by law enforcement. Is it a possible solution or just another gimmick? We'll try to get to the bottom of that next on Prime.